Take a break from your busy schedule and join Harold Sala for Guidelines, a 5-minute commentary on living.
Before his death in 1984, Francis Schaeffer developed what some have called a theology of disagreement. Schaeffer never abandoned his position that the true mark of a Christian is the ability to love unconditionally. Yet he also was convinced that one cannot really love without hating the opposite of what one loves. Schaeffer was not the first to articulate a theology of disagreement. He was largely indebted to a man who lived some 2,700 years before Schaeffer, who made a theology of disagreement a science. His name, Jeremiah. And when you really get to know this man, you discover that he was not a cantankerous sort of fellow whose teeth were on edge, always wanting to pick a fight to get his name in the headlines. He was a sensitive, caring individual, intent on doing the will of God no matter what it cost him, and it cost him plenty. Why was Jeremiah always on the unpopular side of issues? Because that's where God was, and no matter what the cost, Jeremiah came down on God's side. He said, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones." He also said, "I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot." He didn't hold it in either. He spoke fluently, boldly, and without consideration of who would be displeased at what he said. Jeremiah was called by God to be a spokesman, calling God's people back to himself. And when they refused to budge, he told them the price that they would pay. Thus he became a hated, despised individual, persecuted and belittled. He was thrown into prison, put in stocks, even thrown into a slime pit or a tar pit and left to die. But a foreigner, an Ethiopian, rescued him from the clutches of death. Read about it in Jeremiah 38. Was his the only voice that was denouncing corruption? Not at all. Contemporary with Jeremiah were voices such as Daniel and Ezekiel, both young men. Ezekiel, a fellow priest, was preaching in Babylon. Daniel was in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. Habakkuk and Zephaniah were working alongside Jeremiah in Jerusalem. Nahum was announcing the fall of Nineveh, and Obadiah was predicting the ruin of neighboring Edom. Now, what does this have to do with us today? Are there qualities in the life of this man that we should emulate? Have we become so intimidated by what is happening around us that we fear the consequences of speaking out against the vile corruption of our culture and day? Have we become so fearful of the hostility of those who accuse us of being intolerant that we hide for fear of drawing their wrath? There is one thing that you must never, ever forget. The God who told Jeremiah not to fear because he was with him makes the same promise to his child today, who has the courage to denounce wrongdoing when truth is on the scaffold. Is there an issue of personal holiness in your life that God is calling you to take a stand for? Are there issues in your community that you realize are wrong and you must speak out against? Read the book that bears his name found in your Bible. The strength of Jeremiah can be yours today. The darker grows our culture, the greater is the need for a Jeremiah to stand and be counted and say, this is right and this is wrong.
You've just heard Dr. Harold Sala with Guidelines, a 5-minute commentary on living. If you would like to listen to the program again, download a copy, subscribe to our e-commentary, or view other resources, visit guidelines.org. We would like to hear from you too. You can email us at info@guidelines.org. That's info@guidelines.org. Thanks for listening, and we invite you to join us again for the next edition of Guidelines.